Welcome to episode 5. This week, for your assignment, I'm going to be sending you off to do some research on microphones. Essentially, the two basic types of microphones and specific examples of each. The condenser mics and the dynamic mics. But before we do that, I thought we would do what they normally refer to on the cop shows as a perp walk. So we're going to do a little microphone version of the perp walk. And I'll take you through some typical mics that you are likely to find in virtually every professional recording studio and that you will find at LMC. So first of all, here is a Shure SM58. Now, you've actually seen this microphone probably more often than any other. It has been around for about 75 years, and there's a reason for that. It's a good microphone, so it's still in use. There are three versions of it, really. There's the 57, 58, 56, 57, 58. This one is a 58. You've probably seen it in another form also, perhaps on stage or in a recording studio. I'm just going to take that windscreen off where it looks like this. So it's a dynamic microphone. It's a very, very good all-purpose. You can record anything with this microphone. It's sort of your basic entry-level professional microphone. Roughly retails, well, you know what? You're going to figure that out. It's not expensive. It's a dynamic microphone, which means it uses a magnet and a coil. It's kind of beefy. It travels well. You see it used on stage for sound reinforcement. You see it used in the studio for recording. You see it sometimes handheld for vocalists. It works in a lot of contexts, which is why it's a very popular mic. You can't go wrong with this. The Shure SM, in this case, 58. So 56, 57, 58. Shure microphone. Oh, S-H-U-R-E, the name of the company. SM 58 means Shure microphone 58. Okay, so that's one, dynamic. Here is another one. This one is made by the Sennheiser company. And this one is a little more expensive. Basically can be used for essentially the same kind of recording as the SM56 7.8. Except normally you'll find this one on a mic stand. You won't see this one handheld very often. Works for vocals, works for horns, works for drums, works for guitar amps, lots of things like that. It's a little more expensive because it has a special feature, a little special feature setting that allows you 5 different settings between what it calls S and M. S meaning speech, M meaning music. So basically it's an EQ right on the microphone. It's a type of what's known as a high-pass filter, which you will come across as you do the research. So, Sennheiser 421. Nice microphone. Good one. Okay, so this one I think you've seen too. If you've ever watched sports programs or interview programs or news programs, or if you've ever seen reruns of talk shows, evening talk shows, or even live talk shows, comedy shows at night where someone sits behind a desk, or if you've seen Kelsey Grammer when he did that show where he was a psychiatrist, whatever that was called, this is the one you see. This is also used for radio broadcast. Most DJ announcers like to use this radio stations like to use it. It is also a dynamic microphone, which means coil and magnet operated. This is an EV-RE20. EV stands for Electro Voice. That's the name of the company. RE20 is the model. It is an extraordinarily good microphone for voice, but it can also be used for anything that requires a large diaphragm microphone. You can see how big this is compared to the others. So typically you might use it for a kick drum. You could use it for a guitar amp or a bass amp. Works very well for vocals. I've seen it in use even in pianos where the frequency range goes from low to high. So low frequencies in particular, this microphone in particular likes low frequencies, meaning that it's very efficient at the low end. So that's a function of the size of the diaphragm. Larger things like to vibrate at slower speeds. So slower vibrations are lower frequencies. So I think you get the connection there. So Electro Voice EV RE20. Now, we're going to slide over to the condenser side of things. Very common condenser microphone that you will see in the studio. This one also made by the Shure company. This is a Shure SM81. Now, I want to caution you about looking at a microphone and just deciding that because it looks like this, it's always an SM81. There are lots of clones in the world, okay, and there are lots of companies that will make cheaper knockoff models of things and that look similar. It's the same as the situation you run into with automobiles. Anyway, this is the real deal. Shure SM81 condenser mic, which means it needs phantom power. It needs to be powered externally from the mixer or from some external power supply. It is a little more complicated and a little more expensive, particularly good for high frequencies, mids and highs, although it can be used for other things as well. But it's the choice of most engineers for overhead mics on cymbals in a drum kit, for example. So that's this bad boy, the SM81 made by the Shure company. It's got a couple of features too. It's got a similar kind of high pass filter on it, as you saw on the Sennheiser. And it also has a pad, a dB pad, which allows you to make the microphone less sensitive by either 10 dB actually, which means it would take 10 dB more pressure for the microphone to react. Why is that a good thing? Because you might want to use it for something that's putting out a lot of sound pressure level. And if you left it wide open, it would go into clipping. In other words, it would not be able to, it would move so far that it would start to create distortion in the signal. So sometimes that 10 dB pad is a great advantage, and you'll see that on lots of other high-end microphones. So condenser mic, the Shure SM81, good one. This guy, I love this mic. It's got a lot of versatility. It's a Sennheiser. And it's a Sennheiser that's made for several different applications. It's similar to the SM81. You can see it's kind of roughly the same size. By the way, the color doesn't matter. They come in lots of different colors. This one comes in two parts actually. It's a Sennheiser ME62, and it comes in a little box like this. And then the other little box has its capsule in it, or its power supply in it. It's powered by a battery. It has a power supply inside. I'll show you what's happening here. Right there. There's our handy dandy Duracell battery. This part is the power supply. This is the part that will connect to the cable. You see, I think you can see the three-pronged XLR connection right there. This is the operative part of the microphone. This is the diaphragm part. So you put the battery in, we slide this guy like that, do that little magic trick like so, and it's ready to go. Very good for mids and highs. Used in the studio for things like cymbals, or maybe high end of the piano, or maybe acoustic guitar without amplifier. String sections, etc., can be used for that. But it also has a very important use for field recording. And so that brings me to this little device right here. Maybe not so little. This is a parabolic reflector. You've read about these. already in your book. This is used for recording outdoors in lots of, sometimes for live sound actually. I think you're probably going to see it more often in live sound in your experience right now at this moment. Baseball games, football games, sports events, where this parabolic reflector can be aimed at the sound source and will collect sound within the disc and reflect it back to the center, to that capsule, within which will be that Sennheiser microphone. So anyway, you'll see this also used in field recording for nature sounds, for film documentaries, for television and movies, to try to pick up dialogue at a distance. It's a very useful device, and it's a specialty unto itself. Most recording engineers who work in studios do not have experience with this. But if you work for a television show, or if you work for a news service, a news broadcaster, or if you are doing documentary films, you'll see this bad boy. Okay, last microphone to show you today is this guy right here, AKG 414. Now, the AKG 414 is a really special mic. I've got it in its little cradle right now. It's a special sort of shock-absorbing, held together with elastic in the middle, elastic bands, shock mount, which keeps all vibrations, or probably at least 99% of vibrations, out of that microphone. You don't want vibrations from the floor. You don't want unwanted vibrations. The only vibrations you want are the ones that are entering into the diaphragm, which, by the way, I think you can see the disc of the diaphragm right there. Well, this microphone actually has two sides. And the reason it has two sides, and I'll take it out of its shock mount right now, is because it also has switchable pickup patterns. Now, you've read about pickup patterns. You've seen them in your book. This one has 4 pickup patterns. It has omni, which means it's universally sensitive in 360 degrees in a sphere around the entire microphone. As if this microphone were in the center of a beach ball and it was picking up vibrations from the circumferences and the external surfaces of the beach ball. So in every direction, 360 degrees in a spherical pattern. So that's omni. But it can also be set to cardioid, meaning heart-shaped, meaning that it is less sensitive on the side and more sensitive towards the front. It can also be set on what is known as supercardioid, which is what I just described, plus some sensitivity to the rear, because there are times when you are going to want some of that ambience as well. It also has a setting for what is known as figure 8, or bidirectional, which means that this face of the microphone, the silver side, is picking up as essentially cardioid in that direction, and the back side is picking up cardioid in that direction. Or if I hold it this way, and that away. Why is that good? Well, you might want to be recording 2 sound sources at the same time. This is not stereo. It combines the 2 signals into one signal. Okay, it's a very important distinction. But it allows you to record from 2 sides of the microphone and not accept very much information from the 90 degrees left and right. This can be very useful. 2 vocalists, for example, at the same time, when you're recording them at the same time. Or what I've used it for many times in the studio is to place in between sets of toms on a drum kit, so that one microphone can hear this tom on this side and this tom on that side. And I don't have to use 2 mics, and I don't have to use up 2 channels, and it works really, really well for that. It's got a lot of other uses too, but it's got switchable patterns. That's a very cool thing. It also has on the back, and you'll see this when you do the research, that it has a high-pass filter, and it has a 10 and 20 dB pad. Okay, that's enough for now. off to your research.